Hey everyone, it's David Fine from the Figure Guys podcast. We are back, we are live, and I think this is the very first edition of the show where one of our guests decides, I'm going to wear a mask. They haven't even been on the show, they're already embarrassed to be on the show, or is that just their gimmick? We'll find out. We have the Mad Reaper on the program. Never fear the Reaper, but he's on the program tonight. Of course, we have Mid-Atlantic Matt from Mid-Atlantic Customs. And of course, we can't have a program without the smartest man in the room, the fig historian himself, Brother Brutus Valentine. That's all coming up next on a live edition of the Figure Guys podcast.
David Fine Media, taking the spoken word to the next level.
It's the show made by custom fans for custom fans. Every week, the guys get together to talk customs, wrestling, memories, and more. Join David Fine and friends now for the Figure Guys podcast. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Pod Daddy himself, Mr. David So Fine.
Welcome into another exciting edition of the Figure Guys podcast. I will give it to Smash Ventura Productions. I asked him, I said, Smash, why in the hell are you putting dancing babies in the introduction to the podcast? It's because we're talking about the dancing babies in the introduction to the podcast. And it's one of those things. Yeah, well, I mean, if my head on, I think it's Big Daddy Pumps, Scott Steiner's body does not drive you away from this podcast. Trust me, folks, that's not how I look with a shirt off. I think that's maybe how Brutus looks without a shirt on. But of course, Michael Weems, a big fan of the program, but I think he's asleep because, he has to go to work early. I just wanted to welcome everyone back into the program. We were off last week. We have exactly 4 more shows of the season, but breaking news. The Figure Guys podcast has been picked up for season number 2, starting next year, late January, early February. Of course, hopefully Brutus Valentine will be back, but Mid-Atlantic Matt is going to be taking over the helm. He's going to be steering the ship into the new year 2022. I'll still be on the program, but, like Zash, a man would say, we're going to have a new face for the podcast. And this man, Mid-Atlantic Matt Simmons, is an expert, a customizer extraordinaire. But speaking of customizers, the man to my right, the man who is already embarrassed to be on the program, he had to wear a mask.
Oh, not at all.
A Mad Reaper. I mean, I should be the one wearing a mask, but welcome into the program, and thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me. I'm really honored to be here. I'm excited.
Good to have you.
It's funny when you book a show a year out and you ask people, hey, can you be on the program? Sure, that sounds great. And then you follow up with them and you say, hey, you're gonna be on the program next week, and they say, who dis? New number. But not the Mad Reaper. He said, I am on the program. Count me in. And I just want to thank you, of course, once again for being on the program. Mid-Atlantic Matt. I mean, you in the pre-show, we were looking at the Reaper's work on his Instagram page. Of course, just go to Instagram, just type in the Mad Reaper. It is we've had a lot of great customizers on the program. I mean, from Zashman to, Brutus even does. He does some digital work, nice. Which is beyond belief, and I cannot believe he did not enter Customania, that'll be coming back next, Customania 2. Your work, Mr. Reaper, I am amazed. I mean, I am great at doing audio editing, video editing, but you know, the things that you put together, was it I know Bruce is going to ask, is it a skill that you maybe learned in school, or is it something that you just decided, hey, I got the time on my hands, I'm going to start doing this?
Yeah. Well, I'm 32 years old now. So like it was one of those things that I first did when I was 12 and like 11. And so one of the very first things that I got into early on was like making a Hayabusa figure from a old Jax Deluxe Ruthless Aggression era. And so like it was like those skills that were really choppy and really terrible back then. I got all those out of the way kind of earlier on. So when thanks Dash, man, I appreciate that. But yeah, so when I got back into it, it was really fun kind of coming back with more of a artistic background and more of a foundation, because I got back into it probably about 2016 now. So probably about 5 years I've been reintegrated back into wrestling. The Bullet Club kind of piqued my interest, and Lucha Underground was the main thing. You know, I'm a huge Lucha fan.
Yeah.
I mean, the work. I'm just going to bring up a couple of the pictures that you shared with me. I mean, it's amazing. It's
Thank
just,
you.
I mean, just some of the work. Let me just find this. It's always good to. Yep, here it goes. Open that, share that. I mean,
Yeah.
just talk about this. I mean, the Joker. I mean, this is folks, see, this is the one great thing about the show. It's called the Figure Guys. It's not the Wrestling Figure Guys. We have people from all over, from different genres. I mean, tell us about this. I mean, did you do the entire? Just tell me what you did.
So, this was about 2019, I think, right before coronavirus hit. And I was just watching the Joker, and I had the Ghostbusters, the manager figure. I blanked out his name, but it was the Diamond Select Walter Peck figure from Ghostbusters with the suit. I actually had bought one of the things as a customizer, and I'm sure you guys know, like, I'm always looking for fodder. So like I buy so many figures for so many different reasons, like the ones that I want to display, the ones that I want to keep packaged, and then there's some that I buy solely for the purpose of destroying. And so when Toys R Us was closing over here in the States, we had a big clearance closeout sale on the Ghostbuster Walter Peck figure, and I think I got like 4 or 6 of them, something like 6 of them at like $8 each. And so I was sitting on those, and that was probably about a year before Joker came out. And when Joker came out, I was like, I need to make this figure, because that's what I wanted. You know, if DC was making an official Joker figure, I would have pre-ordered it. So that's where I was at in terms of what inspired me to make it.
I mean, this thing is, it's amazing. I mean, this next one, I mean, that is definitely.
Yeah, I gotta give a special shout out right here to one of my good friends, Diorama Dad. He's at Diorama Dad. He created my Lucha Underground temple, and that thing's just a beast. That's pretty much
I've seen all the photographs of that being made years ago.
Yeah, it's like
dude, I didn't know that was yours. That's awesome.
Thank you. Oh man, yeah, I love that. Yeah. It's a great background piece to display the work, you know.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I mean, folks. I mean, you're looking at the stuff, the figures that people that have come on this program. I mean, like Matt. I mean, his figures aren't just the figures. It's everything around. I mean, whenever you're putting these things, when you're putting the figures together, I mean, don't you? I mean, you just tell everybody. I mean, the work that goes into just getting someone to put together the temple. I mean, the Lucha Underground temple. I mean, it's not just about the figures. It's about the photography. It's about the things around it that makes the story even better.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I think like one of the things that I kind of distilled, because I was writing a book on customizing here. That's kind of one of the projects I've been working on this year while I've been quiet. But so I've kind of distilled it. And one of the things is like, it's not always about getting like that 100% authentic likeness, or that 100% accurate, like Hot Toy scale likeness. What I've kind of tweaked out and I distilled is like, the smaller in scale, when it's like a 7-inch figure, like the energy and the vibe of the character is kind of important. Like whatever kind of persona that character has. And so like, for instance, like that Pentagon, I went through so many iterations with like the chest piece, and I made one out of latex. Like I've tried so many experimental like mediums back then, and I had one out of latex, and it was terrible to paint. It was it couldn't stretch too far. But one of the things that it was is like it really made the whole figure look like bulkier on top. And so one of the things that like I try to do is looking at like the silhouette of the figure, and like looking at like the main features that a more casual wrestling fan is going to look at and point out and be like, oh, that's that wrestler, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely it's the devil in the details. I mean, it's not just. I mean,
yeah,
I have noticed that.
Nice.
In LJNs, I mean, it's one thing, but in like Mattel and in anything besides LJN, it is not just about the figures. It's about the surrounding areas. I mean, in LJNs, they're just so huge, and you can't bend them. You can't. I mean, unless you pick up a new Zash man, he's come up with the bendy LJNs, which are amazing, and the see-through ones, which I need to get. But I mean, this Ultimate Warrior is amazing.
Well, and that's what I loved, actually. I do like the LJNs because like that is like the energy personified. Like before they had that articulation, you know, you couldn't really, all you had was that silhouette, really what all that sculpt. And that's what I really do admire about like a lot of the old toy lines. And that's what I think made them so sentimental. Like the Hasbros are so like not accurate necessarily as we think accuracy now, but what those Hasbros do is like they embody that character's personality, and like, you know, like that Papa Shango figure's kind of got like a mysterious aura around him, even if you have no idea who Papa Shango is. And that is like that toy magic as a customizer. That's kind of what I try to capture, is like that magic, you know, of what like, oh, that feels like a yeah.
I mean, awesome. This Ultimate Warrior, it's just amazing. And the next one that we have coming up is an Owen Hart. I mean, I love this Owen Hart.
This is I gotta definitely shout out Showstopper Custom Figs. He's my tag team partner on this one. We had a huge Owen Hart collaboration. This was the, I think, third run of Owen Hart figures, and we have we've only done a few repeat attires, but we tried to span all attires, like all these niche ones. Like we did a New Japan one with his red Canadian headband. Like that head sculpt's super fun to sculpt, you know, because it's like super niche and one off, and when am I going to use it again, pretty much.
That's cool.
It's definitely amazing. And the next one we have up, Mortis.
Oh, the Mortis. Nice.
Boy, what a gimmick in WCW. That was a weird gimmick, but I mean, this is an amazing figure that you put together.
Thank you. Yeah. This is actually an Ultimate. So this was based off of an Ultimate Bret Hart. And one of the reasons why was because of the shoulder pads at first. I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to cast those, but I was able to actually cast those in like a flexible resin. But what I did was use a shield, like the Roman Reigns vest, as like a basis for the shoulder, you know, for like a shoulder platform, essentially. So I cut the tactical vest over here and on the back, and was able to just cut away until essentially what you see is really those shoulder pads, but what it is fully supported on his shoulders. Like those skulls are resting at that height perfectly, because, you know, it was one of those details that I wanted to get right and not have them flopping around or anything.
Yeah, it's cool because they're like the shoulder movement, you'll still have that there.
Yeah.
You know, that's a nice detail.
Yeah, I mean, the decals on here, the details and the decals on here. Last week we had customizer Jay Rain on, and he creates his own decals. Who is your go-to person? I mean, or do you create the decals on your own?
All over the board, all over the board. One of the main guys is Curb Stomp. I mean, he was one of the earlier friends that I had coming back into it. But I mean, stuff like Mortis. Mortis has no decals on him, so like that was all just hand painted by me. And so like I've done decals myself. Like so, the Ultimate Warrior that we showed a few times back, that was I drew those actually because that Ultimate Warrior was not like. So it was based off of the Jax Ultimate Warrior, you know, the black and white comic book one. That was just a good example. I actually made these decals on the tights there because for that official release of the figure, I think he was like a 1 of 20, something like that, exclusive, where he came with this duster. And so I couldn't even see what his tights looked like. But I had the comic book of what that duster was based off of. So the comic book art, I'm a huge comic book fan, you know, you guys tell that, and that was like my inspiration. Was I took a picture of the comic book cover and made this like black ink line work that is, if you zoom in, it's like the super detailed of his face, and you know, something that only a decal could do, but like it's super detailed in the comic book sense. And yeah, that was an example of it. So sometimes I do it. Sometimes it like requires, you know, I'm a stickler for details. So if a decal doesn't cut it in terms of accuracy, I'm not even interested in using it, and that's what's tough. So it's all towards the end product for me, you know.
Do you have any way of sharing with the people how many hours might go into something like the Ultimate Warrior?
Yeah, geez. So I would say like, yeah, so something like the Ultimate Warrior would that would take me see like, so something like those decals, it probably would take me about 8 hours, even for like, and I would consider Ultimate Warrior like with Asterisk like one of my easier figures.
Yeah.
But I honestly say easier in the sense of his tights, pretty much, the paint work and the tassels. And so the main part is kind of letting it dry. And that's kind of like, as I've gotten older and more experienced, like that's kind of what takes longer. So my decal application by far takes the longest, because my main thing is if I'm going to use a decal, I want it to be so smooth that I'm not seeing it as a piece of film, or I'm not seeing it wrinkled over some muscles. And in order to do that, I probably do 6+ applications of Microsol, which is that post decal shrinking kind of stuff agent that you wipe on top of it after it's applied. And what I've learned is that if I take my time and do that, like the decal that I do get is almost like it almost like shrink wraps the decal into the plastic.
Okay.
And I've just loved my application that I've got from those. And so that's where it's an easy figure, but I'm working on like 20 figures at once. And so I'll go ahead and do Microsol on a bunch of them, but like I'll allow him to dry. And so like that piece is really easy. It's not really manually labor intensive. But something like the tassels on that figure, right? Like a lot of tassels at that size come with like this really thick upper top lining, like on the top of it. And I think that that's something that, you know, most customizers, there's nothing you can do with it. That's what I got available. I'm going to glue this whole thing on. And for me, like I thought that was too bulky. So I have to like shave off the top of the tassels. And essentially what I did was glue a tassel with a very thin top edge for that boot. And so for Ultimate Warrior, those tassels, I've actually had them, like this is how much thought I've put into it, and this is how much refining has gone through all my iterations, right? Like now I know ahead of time if I'm going to make boot tassels that flare out like naturally, the bottom innermost layer of tassels needs to be mounted lower. And so my secondary layer of tassels gets mounted over it, and those naturally drape over the first layer, and it creates like that little detail on that Ultimate Warrior, or Ultimate Warrior. But one of those figures that took me like however many, I sold that figure for like $250, and he's he was not a project of mine, right? Like he's more of a passion project that I'm putting together while I'm piecing together, just like this Undertaker. Like this is a passion project, but like doing that hair took me about 4 hours, you know, because
Jeez.
that hair was applied like a Hot Toys rooted hair, like a 6-scale figure. So I glued those pieces of hair onto Undertaker's scalp going backwards until it's on the top. And that like is something that I only learned, you know, the hard way and through some trial and error of like, you can't start up here when you're doing that hair, because when it gets time to do all this, I mean, you're fighting against yourself, you know, and that's just little things like that I've picked up, and I really have fun with, you know, to be honest.
Mr. Reaper, we should pass that on to the hair transplant people about when they're putting plugs in. They've got to put otherwise it becomes too big. I'm going to ask a stupid question, and this is from Matthew as well. Why aren't you guys just satisfied with what Mattel puts out?
I'll kind of answer first. I mean, I just was never like, I come from the era of Titantron, and so I was a huge Road Dogg fan, and before the Titantron, I guess I come from the bone crunching. Like, I guess, yeah. I mean, growing up though, being at the age in which I started to customize, I should say. So, growing up with bone crunching action and having Road Dogg with a bandana on and absolutely no dreadlocks whatsoever, like, was my biggest. It made me feel like I was playing pretend, and to make a long story short, I guess, like, I really just love that accuracy, and like it would bug me even as a kid, 10, 12 years old. Like, this is supposed to be a Road Dogg figure, and he's got a bandana and he's got no dreadlocks. Like, this can't exist as is. Like, this doesn't cut it. But that's my answer.
If he's a Jack's bone cruncher, he doesn't stand up either, and his leg pops off.
Yeah, that's true.
Loose joints. That's funny.
But I mean,
I'm probably telling you guys something that you know, but Jack's is Jack Friedman, who started LJN, of course. So
yeah, that's awesome. I mean,
okay.
Wow.
I remember learning that from that Toys That Made Us episode. Like, that was interesting.
Yeah, Toys That Made Us. It's about half accurate. Gee, an episode bringing all these Mattel customizers, because the work you do is absolutely stupendous, and we're getting week after week of this, aren't we, David? With these.
Yeah, I mean, we're building. I mean, we're building on, you know, starting with one and then just getting. I mean, just some. I mean, started out just talking LJNs, and then Zash was like, you know, we got to get some other people on here. So that's why we got the Mattel. I mean, we have so many amazing people that have been on the program, but like the Paul Bear, I mean, how much that must have taken you a while, because that just seems like it has a lot of detail.
Well, for that, I can't take credit for Paul. Okay. I mean, he's the Mattel figure, but yeah, I mean, but like that was really just the like Undertaker. So like I consider this more of a fix up, and that's another important part there. So like for me, I think that you know, some customizers draw the line between like what's a fix up, what's a full custom. But like for me, when I'm working, it really is about that end product. So like for Undertaker and Paul Bear didn't have switchable hands. I just had to do that. That's not really anything interesting. But like for me, like for Undertaker, that figure was like missing posable gloves. Like it's something like that. Like the hands make a lot for me. So like those figures, if they would have had the stock hands, and that's the one thing I have about Paul. Like Paul's got a stock hand on that fist, and it bugs me right now. I'll be honest. Like I'm like, I wish he was actually holding that urn.
I can barely look at it. I reckon it's
very But you know, like for Undertaker, that's really a head, but then repainting his facial features to be more accurate or more realistic of a facial paint job.
I like his cravat tie. It's looking pretty good, because for guys, I'm looking beyond the screen. I've got it on the screen behind me, and if you put the Mad Reaper's Instagram up, maybe if you got a spare 5 minutes, it'll turn into 5 days to go through everything he's got.
I mean, but before we got on the program, Brutus was like, you know what, I'm gonna scroll through your Instagram, and he was like, okay. I'm scrolling and I'm scrolling. I mean, I was doing that. I was doing that all day on my phone. I was like, okay, let me just. I'm like, okay. Like 2 hours later, I'm like, God. I mean,
I had
you're
to look on the
you're
iPad last night, but my finger got sore because you've got to go around. I thought I'll have a look on the desktop and then I can see them really big. Sorry to cut you off there, David.
Oh no! I mean, your body of work is just. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean,
Thank you guys.
And I mean, and for your age, I mean, you are 32.
Yeah.
Last week, Jay Rain was like, "I'm so old." I'm like, "How old are you?" 22. I mean, and Brutus was like, "Oh my God, you're 22. Holy shit!" I was like, 22 years ago, I got married. 22 years ago, you weren't around. It's just like, I mean, it's just it. I have found this in Brutus. I mean, I don't know if you'll agree or disagree. There seems to be a lot of younger people doing customization. I mean, it seems to be a thing that the younger people have gotten into and have gotten really good at.
I reckon, yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, 32 is that nice in between age because you've caught the age of the Attitude Era, and you've got that peak of the Wars, and so you've got a nice body of wrestling love behind you to carry you through. But I think David, these young people, they have a go. In Australia, so they have a crack, and of course they're digital masters. So they put it up. They're great at networking. We've heard about how so many of you customizers work with each other, help each other, supply to each other. I just think they know how to use that thing, that thing pretty well.
And we've gotten so many comments, but we got one comment from the great Zash Man. Of course, you can see his and watch his podcast each and every Thursday at I think 9 Eastern. Yeah, 9 Eastern. It's LJ and Fight Club. I mean, it's a show that of course Brutus gives his 2 cents. I mean, he wants to see the Mad Reaper do an LJN custom.
I would love to. I'd love to. I want to. It's gonna happen. I mean, I want to almost sculpt it from scratch. Like I really like that traditional. Like I'm weird like that. I'm kind of like I like that physical sculpting kind of still. So I haven't fully made the full transition to digital yet. So I would love to sculpt one like that.
You know who officially is that he does digital is of course Brutus, but that's I mean he can make you a date. I mean if you want a customizing figure of maybe a future date, then he can definitely do that. But this next one of Mankind, I mean Mick Foley, I mean it's awesome.
Thank you. And like this would be like another one of these, like I would say I wouldn't even classify this like one of my customs. I'd be like this is one more of my fix-ups. But like on something like this, there was a lot of nuance. Like that head isn't an actual official head. That head is based off of, I believe it's I can't remember whose face, which Mick Foley's face that is. I think it's the one with the longer like Mankind hair maybe. But then it's got, I can't remember what face it is, but it's got Cactus Jack's hair. So I did a hair transplant on a Mick Foley face that had that more sneer, like the Cactus Jack shirt face before we got the ringside one. So like I was trying to make a more official like cactus. Like this is kind of what I mean by like the energy of like the Cactus Jack figure. Like the first Cactus Jack figure was pretty great, but he had like this stoic look on him. And Cactus Jack to me, like that energy has like his tongue out. So like it might be weird to make a figure with his tongue like in that expression, but to me, Cactus Jack, this is the energy of Cactus Jack versus Dude Love versus Mankind. So to me, this is Cactus, It's that little detail for me.
Yeah, I mean, I loved watching Cactus Jack, back in, the NWA, WCW days. I mean, that seems to be the height of my my Cactus fandom. I mean, I think this was his best iteration of his gimmick. I mean, he definitely had no fear, and I mean, I wasn't a big fan of the of the kind of the WWE, when he was when he was there, but when he was in WCW and NWA, when he was facing Abdul the Butcher and all those, I just love this figure. I mean, if I saw it, I'd be like, I gotta have this.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
It's definitely, folks. I mean, once again, I can't express and say enough. Go to the Mad Reaper's Instagram page at just Instagram. Just type in the Mad Reaper, and folks, I mean, if you're at work and you're saying, I need like 5 hours. I need to kill 5 hours. And you want to see great customization.
Don't get fired though.
Yeah, don't get
no. Oh,
Yeah.
I've learned at my job how to kind of do it on the download, but do it on your phone.
Okay.
Kill some time. But I mean, you'll be just going through days and hours, and it's just amazing. But the other thing that I want to bring up. You're also a part of another website. You want to kind of talk about that? Figure Giant. I mean, it's back up. It's a great website. Kind of just tell the fans watching and listening what the Figure Giant is.
Yeah, so Figure Giant, we started that about 2018. Me and my wife did. I got a bunch of figures to destroy, and I found out that I was pretty good at cracking them open. And then because of my previous experience when I was 11, 12, I was too young to be standing over the stove unattended with boiling water and tongs, dipping my Jax figures into that. And I was that kid, like pulling them out of there, ripping off the heads, having little heat blisters. Yeah. So for me, when I got back into it, learning how to crack open the Elite torso, I was like, hey, I get pretty good at this. Like this kind of, there's a finessing to it to make sure you don't completely destroy the inner pig and male and female parts of the plastic, right? To keep the figure together.
Yeah.
And so I found out like I get pretty good at that, and I can do it pretty quickly. And when I was getting back into it 5 years ago, or 2017, 2016, there was like a huge, I'll say like when I was coming back in as far as Mattel Elite customizers, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, but like when I came back in, there was like a huge gap between like kids that were like me when I was young, like 12 and 13, trying to make your own favorite customizers. And then there were like very few customizers that were making like figures better than the factory. And so like custom was back then very much like a second rate, like until you get the factory release kind of figure. And for me, custom was like, nah, like custom was like personalized, creme de la creme, like how you want it, one of a kind. And so when I started cracking the torsos, I had this excess of parts, and I was like, we can make better figures all around. And I got to the point where I was taking on too many commissions. I was like, what's the next way to help customizers that doesn't involve me making the custom? And it's like, well, let's make parts more available. Like literally when we piece out a part, if I buy 10 Stings and I only need those white pants, I'm going to have 10 Batista torsos that I'm going to not need. And that is the original need and the spark behind Figure Giant, where I'm like, we can create a business model where we're pretty much harvesting Mattel Elites
body parts
for like the Mad Reaper Butcher Shop.
Harvesting, it's good. It's quite good. Yes, it's good. No humans were harmed in this. I was just having a look at the site. It's very well set up. Who's the web expert? You or your wife, or both?
Thank you. I did the design. She does the Shopify, the spreadsheets, and all that stuff.
Now, just telling you, viewers, you can get a Dangerous Danny Davis head for $4.99, which would be fantastic.
Right.
And then I saw some going down to $2.99. These are just the heads. What about a Baron Corbin? Is he free, or do you pay people?
Well, that's what's weird. Is like, it's really weird because like there's some really bad wrestlers and really bad hit scans, but like if they only released it once, like that Cosmov guy or like whatever, like just Bruno, like Bruno Sammartino, like that's really what dictates the value of the head, is how available has Mattel made it, and that's what's so weird about it. some of the biggest guys have the hardest or the easiest to find heads, but like the Shawn Michaels hit scan from WrestleMania 14, where they only released that one with those with the braids once. That head was probably like $15. Some people might pay $20 for that head. That's where it's crazy now. Especially with the pandemic. I think there's an inflation just even going on in the market in terms of being able to buy an Elite. Like, there was a point when I started, I was able to get an Elite like under $10 was kind of the limit. Now it's like you might have to pay $20 for an Elite.
I mean,
that might be the cheapest it gets.
Boy, folks, who would have thought in a global pandemic, our biggest problem would be, where in the hell do I get a Shawn Michaels head and now have to pay 20?
And toilet paper.
I mean, if that's your biggest problem, then you're doing pretty good. But I mean, and also if you have a wife who's seems like is an amazing person who likes and loves that you're doing this and is helping out. I mean, those are two things, Brutus, that you have to make a successful business. As long as if it has to do with wrestling, you got to have a good wife and a good husband, and put them together. You make a great team.
So. It's often seen that the partners are very long suffering, supportive but understanding. But you have to be careful looking at the site, because if you ask what were you doing, I'm just trying to find what the cheapest head is. $2.99, but someone had to do the joke at some point. And I'm only looking at the heads. I mean, the legs are there, and I reckon that's a good thing. It's a good sustainability initiative too. And you pay a lot for figures, and you said you got to crack them open, use a part here. You're very unhappy with how some hands are, and you might swap that.
Yeah.
And this is a way of recycling and adding to the hobby that you're sharing with all these people as well. So it's not as if you're going to retire to Florida on this or something, or maybe you will.
I definitely won't be retiring any soon on it. But
it's a good side project,
yeah, and it does. It's really rewarding. Like, I'll be honest, like I get DMs all the time. That's like, hey, there's kids that are, I don't even want to say kids. Like, there's amazing customizers that are young men that started now a few years ago, like, that couldn't crack a torso. And so, like, what makes me happy is all the DMs that I get of people like learn how to crack their own torso, because I'm not hoarding that knowledge. I'm not like, oh, I'm great at torso cracking, I'm not teaching anyone. No, like, that is so anti-me. I put out a video of how to torso crack my way because I want more people to not butcher torsos, because I think like that I really do. Like, the rising sea raises all ships, you know what I mean? And for me, when I see that, like, hey, I got into customizing because of you, I just want to thank you for doing that. Like, that to me has made me enjoy my time here, especially within the past few years. Like, nothing, even all the financial, when I get my rocks off on like watching those eBay auctions for Owen Hart's go up, that's such a temporary little burn compared to like the feeling of like kind of helping the next generation of customizers. And it sounds cheesy, but legit, like, honestly mean that, because I'm not retiring off the Figure Giant anytime soon. It's almost like trying to use a communal part spin. That's kind of the idea.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great idea.
I still reckon Pez dispensers might go.
I mean,
I would love
be
to.
retiring. I mean, that is not. I mean, I've seen pest dispensers of 9,000 of those kind of things, but I've never seen a WWF or WWE, Pez dispenser. I'm surprised that. I mean, kids like Pez. I guess my son got some Pez in his Halloween stuff the other night on last night, and I mean, kids love it. And I'm surprised that no one has captured that. And now that Mad Reaper's got a great idea that we gave him, so he's gonna retire now on Pez money.
I mean, what I love about Pez though is like that mechanical feature. Like, there's an aesthetic that I think as customizers we gravitate. Like, it's not just like a toy collector. Like, as a customizer, it's like you really fall in love with that plastic, and there's a functionality behind that makes these toys classic. And that's really that string. So man, whether it's Pez or whether it's Jax or Mattel, like there's an element to that sculpt of trying to embody a character and immortalizing something forever that I just love, like that keeps me 32 years old, still wanting to customize, and loving it.
Yeah, I mean, and most of the parts that you take apart and put on FigureGiant.com, which is like Brutus says, it's an amazing and well put together website. Where do you find these? Do you go to the store and get them? Do you go to not auctions? Do you go out, on a Sunday and go, hey, look, there's a garage sale that has a lot of wrestling figures that this person doesn't know about, and I'm gonna buy them for $10.
Snag them up.
Weirdly enough, like for myself, that's kind of how a lot of those parts started. Was like a lot of like used figures, and I'll drop this hint. I don't know like if it's for certain, but in all my years of stuff, what I've gathered is it's way harder to crack a older figure than it is a new one. And I think that it's due to the brittleness of the plastic. And the more like plastic has been exposed to the air, the more like likelihood it has of cracking, and not having that like enough of the part flex to not crack or have stress marks on the individual plastic injected piece. And so I started getting a bunch of 8 figures in huge lots, for myself I didn't care if they were scuffed up. I didn't care if they were missing stuff. And as I personally use those for my custom experiences, it was miserable. Some of those figures, like some of those, I'd almost have to do a restoration before I would even start to use it for parts. And so weirdly enough now, especially in Figure Giant now, I'd say 98.5% of the parts are all brand new figures. And it actually, weirdly enough, with the inflation, it makes sense now. But really, like when you have the accessories, like that's a little bit more of a, more pieces of the carcass to sell. But but it's also easier to crack, and so you actually have less loss. And so what I would experience when I would get lots of like 50 is there would be 5 of them that no matter how great I am at cracking torsos, I'm not going to crack. Like they will be destroyed. And maybe it's me, but like I really do think that it's like this plastic is so brittle that no matter how much you heat it up, no matter how much it's ready to separate, it's just not. Like these male and female pieces inside the plastic are going to crack, and you're going to have a terrible torso. And so for that reason, even torsos are the most, I feel like torsos are the most rare, because if you're cracking, you're most likely not going to mess up and destroy the arms. You're most likely not going to mess up and destroy the head. Most likely not going to mess up and destroy the legs. But even if you're really good and you get a really old figure, there's a chance that you're going to have to trash that torso. And so like in the, total body count of things here, torsos are the hardest thing to really harvest successfully from a figure. So new figures are easier to get those from.
I mean, who would have thought, Matt and Brutus, that we learn how to harvest parts tonight on the podcast?
Well, I could mention. Have you ever heard? Excuse me a second. Burke and Hare, I think they were Scottish body snatchers in the 19th century, and because in Scotland surgery was the key place for it, and they needed more parts for harvest, Mr.
Yeah.
But because the pay was so good, they actually started harvesting live people because, they got paid for the bodies that they produced.
Yeah.
So, Burke and Hare in Scotland, look them up. It's a real thing, and it was some interesting parallels. And I see why you're called the Mad Reaper, and you're not called the Gentle Angel. That's for sure.
The plastic angel of death.
The plastic angel of death.
Oh Lord,
has a nice ring to it.
This next figure that we have up here, it's an amazing one. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, this was the Blue Blazer. This was a part of the Owen Hart series, but like this was really, we did a few different iterations of Blue Blazer. This one specifically is, one of my favorite things to sculpt is masks, and one of the things that I love about sculpting a mask is the little nuances, like how the ears tuck in and how it holds up against the nose. How does it distort the nose bridge a little bit? And so I sculpted this mask over the 3D printed Owen Hart head, and yeah, this was just a big successful Blue Blazer figure. I mean, this was another one of the Showstopper collaborations, but in terms of what it meant, like it was really important for me to try to do Owen justice, and this was before AEW had announced this, and I honestly, I know like some of those AEW guys follow me, like straight up with the Phoenix, they took that attire that I made. Like I was the only customizer that even created that attire with the gold leopard, and those guys follow me and liked it and put him out. You know what I mean? Like it's almost too much of a coincidence. So like I'm not certainly not taking any credit, but I would be shocked if between that whole team and deciding that Owen Hart figures were going to be made, that like some hubbub above our Showstopper and I's Owen Hart collab didn't have something to do with, you know, really seeing the value and the thirst for him. Like Owen's such a legend that we all love him, and he's the one that deserves all the credit. I truly mean that. And like for me, I wanted to be able to celebrate him, and so now hearing that AEW is going to be making figures of him, I'm on cloud nine. Like I love that. You know, this is why we customize. So
yeah, I mean, this is definitely a gimmick that I look back and say, if they had not done this gimmick, I mean, what would Owen have been? I mean, he could have been a coach or a mentor in AEW. I mean, it's just this. It's an amazing figure, but it's one of those ones. It's like
sad.
It's kind of sad, and it's like it's one of those like, he had a great gimmick, and then he decided to do the Blue Blazer, and fate had it. He it's sad to a lot of the wrestlers, that have passed away, what would they be now, especially this one? Yeah. I mean, it's one of those ones that, that I don't know. It's very sad, but this is an amazing figure.
But thank you. And just to piggyback on what you said there, though, like that's what, like a lot of these guys, like when the law does intersect with it, like Hayabusa passing away, or I mean, that is really their only. Customs are the only way that we can celebrate them in figure form when, the Owen Hart family and WWE are so far from making up. It only is like customizers that we can fill that gap, I
mean, and these next two ones, I mean, they're once again amazing.
These are, like little fix-ups here. I've just been on a little Billy Gunn kick, so I don't even consider these parts, but like this is like something, so like these are like more of my warm-up sketches. Like if I'm gonna get in and like try to get my head in like to a really intensive work session for working on figures where I'm actually doing like painting and sculpting, I like to kind of start switching my head up by doing part switches and like thinking of like, okay, if I take off this head and make this unique Kevin Nash and use that head and make this Diesel or this Street Clothes, and kind of like thinking about how I can make new inventions. That's really where those Billy Guns come from. Cause like for me, customizing like Adam Bomb, super easy figure. And he was for a custom contest 2 weeks ago. And I blanked out the due date for, it's crept on me. It crept up on me. And I was like, I chose to do Adam Bomb. But so much of it is mental, and so much of it's like kind of pondering about these part choices that for me, I was always eyeing the Sid Justice, the newest Elite with the referee. He had that red singlet. Yeah. So I was already clocking him in my head. And then I already had the black gloves from the release, the Legends release of The Undertaker or whatever earlier this year. They had one where he came with black gloves. And then like for the goggles, like I know I had Adam Rose glasses that have those kind of goggle shrouds. And if I could merge that with like a Kalisto face mask, that I could create like goggles with a wraparound. But that figure, like so much of that work was trying to organize him mentally with like what's the best part choice. What's the
Mm-hmm.
so many revisions. Like that's the editing of a figure. Swapping out those gloves for sculpted ones, or all these little things.
Yeah, those little things make a huge difference, even though it may seem minuscule.
Yeah, it's like little details that I fret over.
Yeah,
but
they all add up and play off each other.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean this one is also amazing.
Yeah, like this is a perfect example. Like super nothing. Like it like comes out of the idea of like having that extra parts like for that or for like the tights. That's from the Ultimate Warrior, and then that head they released on the suited body. And like part of this is like a creative exercise where it's not even necessarily like nothing that I'm doing painting or nothing sculpting. It's like trying to envision like, okay, what if he had one more match afterwards where he did try to wear the tassels, but didn't feel like putting on the makeup because he had shorter hair. That's kind of like where this crazy figure comes from, where I'm trying to make it like he's a factory release, but what if the Warrior had one more match or something like that?
Yeah, I mean these and the blue blazer. I mean, I love
nice.
I mean that's with the cape. Yeah, I mean that's amazing.
Yeah, I really the blue blazer. I mean, actually, some of that cape. A little weird anecdote was anecdote is that that's actually a British Bulldog cape. And it was
okay.
It was cut and used with sequins and the boas on the side or like the fur on the side. So things like that, like that's what I mean by the creative kind of experimenting. It's like, how can I make this? Same with this figure right here. It's like, that's an Orange Cassidy jacket that I separated from the Orange Cassidy shirt and stuff. But like those boots and that figure, Brett always wore tucked in boots, cowboy boots. Like there's no part that has that kind of like jean sculpt. And so like, it's just super little things like how big a knee socket is for the plastic. Not all the parts are interchangeable. So a part of like the process is figuring out what parts will actually plug in and work, accept each other,
Yeah. And on the pre-show, Matt, you were talking about the Reaper's Hogans. I mean, these are amazing. Talk about these.
Ever since I can't remember the first time I seen like Hogan wrestle or like, seen the picture of him wrestling in Japan, but I remember having that shirt and like, that's a newer shirt. And so it's one of those things where like the shirt really like inspired that, and going backwards, I'm like, oh, he wore like silver boots and had like this Ichiban symbol or whatever. And I'm like, that's so cool. And, to see him kind of in a darker light versus the yellow, I love that, that version of Hogan. And like this cane, this is another fix up, but like, I think like this is an example of the factory got a lot wrong. Like when the factory released this figure, he had no knee pads, and it's like, that's not a big deal. It's not, but like, if you're like really detail oriented and want that little touch, I'm like, I need knee pads on him because Kane had amazing knee pads in real life during this time. If you guys remember, like he had those red knee pads with like that real fishnet kind of over that. And so like details like that, I'm like, if I can find some of that fishnet lace and attach that to the knee pads, like if you could zoom in, or once you guys see that, like on those knee pads on that Kane figure, that's actually real like fishnet kind of fabric, but it's also pretty to scale. So like something like that, I feel like that little detail. I sold one of these fix up canes. I think he went for over $150, and this was like half hour less of work, actual
awesome,
work,
Yeah, I won this Hogan without the shirt on, but the jacket, the robe.
Yeah, and he's got a different head scan here too. I did a darker of I like, this was kind of, I do some heads where like I try to experiment painting with like a more of a realistic tone kind of, but not like, I don't want to do like full repaint, but like, where the faces of most humans are a degree different from the rest of the body. That I realized afterwards it doesn't really translate to figures as well. So I'm probably not going to be doing that a lot more. But
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Muhammad
yeah,
Ali.
I'm doing some little figure photography, but like stuff like this I actually had made into like a blanket. But like this kind of shot, like I'm a huge fight fan, so you know, it's like that's what's fun about not only customizing them, but like you got to pose them once in a while too. You know, I feel like that's something that I have untapped yet. I want to do more of. Or that's another thing though, that Lucha Express or that Jurassic Express. Like me and BW had teamed up to make that Jurassic Express figure, that 3-pack, and ours came out first. And if you look at like our figure, and then you look at the ringside exclusive, like it's
identical.
It's got to be inspired by, you know what I mean? Like nothing I'm taking credit for at all, but like it's just like it's clear that there's like a something in the air, you know what I mean? Like I mean, this one was all hand painted too, or airbrushed too. I airbrushed some of this attire actually too.
Wow.
That seems insane. Like a lot of like a lot of fine details, which which is, I mean, I have come
great stuff, man. Great stuff.
I have come to when I looked at all your work. I mean, it is the devil is in the details, and your work is just amazing. And I just wanted to thank you for coming on the program tonight. And it's, you know, your work is amazing. And if people wanted to follow you on Instagram, I've already told them, but I would like to hear it from the horse's mouth, the Mad Reaper. How can people follow you on Instagram? Yeah, I'm at the Mad Reaper or at Figure Giant if you guys need parts. But yeah,
I'll be making an order soon.
I appreciate it.
Harvesting right as we speak. And again, I said it earlier, if you've got a spare few minutes, go to Instagram. You'll see so much. And also YouTube, the video of your studio is a real eye-opener as well.
Thank you.
That's a whole nother story for another time. But
yeah, I mean, you like Brutus says, I mean, if you have a few spare minutes or hours, I mean, just go over to Instagram, to YouTube. But it's been another amazing show, guys. And next week, we have the great Caleb Langford will be stopping by on the program. But just want to thank the Mad Reaper for coming on. And
thank you.
Of course, for the great.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you are welcome here anytime. Anytime. Yeah, and sure. We'll definitely have you back on. But for the great Mid-Atlantic Matt, the great fig historian himself, Brutus Valentine, I am David Fine. We'll see you back here next week. Same time. Same place. See you next week.